Now that it's confirmed that Lauma is actually coming in the first half of Genshin 6.0, which is an announcement that got me pumping up my fist in the air, by the way, I want to look at some teams that I will be trying with Lauma, because I think Lauma is going to be a very interesting character to play, whilst also, of course, being a very pretty woman. The big thing that Lauma brings to the game is, of course, the new Lunar Bloom reaction. You may hear Lunar Bloom and think, ooh, this is some rather complicated thing like Lunar Charge, but it's actually a little bit more simpler than that. The reaction itself doesn't actually do damage in much the same way that Bloom reactions don't actually do damage, they just generate a core, because instead you're actually generating Verdant Dew on top of the Bloom seed itself. This will, of course, be picked up by you, or preferably might be even vacuumed. Instead, the only actual Lunar Bloom damage that exists in the game is going to be direct Lunar Bloom damage, and direct Lunar Bloom damage is similar to, let's say, Ineffa's A1 passive being direct Lunar Charge damage. This damage can crit, it ignores defense, and it will scale with EM. Lauma's EM also boosts it by a further 14% if you have at least 800 EM. This is the cap, by the way, and it has a 2.8x multiplier instead of a 3x multiplier on Lunar Charge for some reason. I don't really understand why these coefficients exist, but they do, so that's just basically part of it. The TLDR of Lauma's kit is that she actually has 200 EM at base on top of the EM that she gets from ascending, so that is really important because one of her skills actually uses exclusively EM, so having at least some EM on her is of course going to be necessary. Now, she is a mage, which means her normal attacks will actually be useful for driving reactions, but otherwise they don't do all that much damage. On top of that, she has a special Arlecchino style Centaur mode. It has a 10-second duration on a 4-second cooldown. Now, during the cooldown of this Centaur mode, you can use a normal charge attack, but the damage is actually not going to be that useful either, so I probably wouldn't be using that all myself. Her skill, on the other hand, has both a tap and hold function, but you're probably never using her tap function. The main thing is that it summons a 15-second AoE field on a 12-second cooldown, and it follows the on-fielder to do some off-field Dendro damage. So that's, of course, going to be very, very useful. By holding her skill, you can actually consume the Verdant Dew that you're collecting from those Lunar Bloom reactions. First off, you convert them into Moon Song stacks, which is going to be useful for her burst, but the other thing is that the more dew that you use, the more direct Lunar Bloom damage you end up doing. So you can basically think of Lauma as Navia if she was using blooms instead. On top of that, enemies who are hit by her skill in any way, shape or form will lose up to 25% Dendro and Hydro resonance at a crown skill, so of course her skill talent levels are going to be important for that. And so because of that, some team comps and some encounters may be able to skip Deepwood entirely. We'll just have to see. Lauma's ult is basically Bloom Yunjin. Bloom Jin, of course. We're looking at a 60 cost burst, which buffs all versions of Bloom damage, including the Lunar Blooms from her skill. You start off with 18 ammo, and you get 6 ammo per Moon Song that you have consumed from her hold skill. This is kind of functioning like Skirk's ult duration extension from using Void Rifts. If you manage to get some more Moon Song within 15 seconds of ulting, that will also automatically convert to ammo as well. The ult does have a 15-second cooldown, by the way, so just keep that in mind. Ammo also drains faster in AoE. Keep in mind that this is going to be something that is important in her Omega AoE teams, and it does seem like each ammo stack itself does have its own 15-second duration, which basically means that when your ult has finished expiring after 15 seconds, you might actually still have some ammo that's just sticking around. So that's of course going to be really, really useful. We also have her A1 passive, where using your skill grants buffs depending on how many Nod-Krai characters are on the team. If it's only Lauma, then you have the C2 Nahida style Bloom buff, which can be very, very useful. I should know, I have C2 Nahida. Whereas if you have at least another Nod-Krai character, you actually trade that Nahida style Bloom buff for what is essentially 40 crit value on Lunar Blooms. I think I'm going to hold on to the same opinion that other people have been speculating, which is that keeping the Nahida style Bloom buff is going to be better than just trying to get more personal damage off Lauma. When another character shows up, that might change, but of course if you decide not to get that upcoming character, then this is probably going to remain the same throughout the entirety of Nod-Krai. And there's also the A4 passive, by the way. Basically, the main thing is that you get up to 32% skill damage, and this caps at 800 EM. This is not damage percent, by the way. This is actual skill damage that you can get from this passive, so that's going to be really, really useful. There's also some cooldown reduction on the special Arlecchino style Centaur galloping thing, but I wouldn't really worry about that too much. So essentially, Lauma is looking to be a very interesting and strong character in these Bloom type teams. I want to look at some of my already favorite Bloom teams and see how they're going to get better with her release, and potentially highlight one of them that I don't think is going to be working all that well. So don't forget to subscribe and feel free to like that video, because there's a lot of other videos I want to do in preparation for Nod-Krai, including a video about everything that's coming with Nod-Krai exclusively within the lens of it being Aloy buffs. This is something I like to do every year as well. So don't forget to ring that bell icon if you're interested in being notified of the latest content on the channel. Alright, let's start off with team number 1 that I think has already been hyped up a lot, which is of course the Nilou teams. Nilou teams have famously gotten massive amounts of AoE damage as part of their gameplay. Also, there's a lot of self-damage from those blooms because they explode and they do a lot of damage, so of course you're going to need some healing on these teams. Medic Nahida can be okay, but I think full EM Sack Kokomi is going to be the way to go for a lot of people in these teams. Now that being said though, this does bring me to a conundrum that I am genuinely considering, which is of course C1 Lauma. If you use your skill or burst, Lauma actually gets a 20-second healing duration for the on-fielder. Provided you keep making Verdant Dew, i.e. you keep making ammo, then Lauma will be able to heal at a rate of 5 times her EM, and if you're aiming for 800 EM, that's obviously 4000 healing every slightly under 2 seconds. This, I think, comes out to being normal-ish Bennett levels of healing, if not a little bit less than normal-ish Bennett levels of healing. At the end of the day though, I want to be able to use this so that I can play with someone like Candace on field instead. All in all, yes, Nilou teams will of course love Lauma in them. Nahida is still going to be a great addition, but without Lauma Scene 1, the team building is going to be a little bit finicky to the point where you might actually put Nahida on a different team. For example, if you were to bring Baiju instead of Nahida, that might end up being the case. We are also getting a rerun of Nahida, by the way, so this is going to be the biggest contention to discuss in the upcoming Should You Get Nahida video. Now, staying in Sumeru for a second, we have Team 2, which is going to be a Quickbloom team. Now, is Cyno back? Unlike Lunar Charge Cyno, where damage percent doesn't matter, because the only Lunar Bloom damage is going to be from Lauma, I think damage percent is actually going to be back for these kinds of Quickbloom teams for Cyno. Now, we could be looking at double Electro Quickbloom with Beidou, or double Dendro Quickbloom with Nahida. This one might actually mean that Cyno does a lot more personal damage, so Cyno mains might prefer that, especially if you have C2 Nahida, by the way. I'm keen to try either and just have a great time. The big question, of course, is going to be whether C1 Lauma, provided you actually get that constellation, can sustain Furina teams at all. I suspect it won't, because it's not team healing. So someone like Baiju is able to sustain Furina teams easily because it's huge team healing, but Lauma's single target healing is, as far as I understand, less than Shillinen's and even at a slower tick rate than Shillinen's, and since Shillinen can actually sustain Furina teams, I don't think Lauma can actually sustain Furina teams. Yelan might end up being the way to go over someone like Furina in a team like this. And in a similar case as well, we have the third team I just want to highlight being Clorinde Quickbloom, and by extension the Chaos teams as well. They may work very, very well with Lauma. I'm going to let the spreadsheet impactors figure out if Lauma makes, at the very least, the Quickbloom Clorinde team suddenly Clorinde's quote-unquote best team again, but I will always personally prefer playing Quickbloom over Cloverload anyway, so that's going to be it. By extension as well, anyone who's an on-field Miko main may be able to rejoice as well. Now, there's one Quickbloom team that I suspect won't work that great, and that's going to be Tighnari's Quickbloom teams. And the main problem, I think, is the Hydro slot problem, because there are a few Hydro characters that don't need normal attacks, which should work pretty well with Tighnari. They all seem to have a little bit of an issue in and of themselves. For example, Modus skill, it only has a 5-second duration and a 12-second cooldown. That's going to kind of suck. Xingqiu and Barbara basically need melee range unless you're normal attacking, which I won't. Kokomi's Jellyfish is probably one of the better options, but the problem is that it's stationary, so if enemies run away from it, you're kind of screwed. This could potentially be fixed with something like Tighnari's Grenade Taunt though, so we'll just have to see how well that turns out. Then of course there's someone like Shigvid, who I think should be slightly less than okay because her Hydro Wrap is not particularly fast, but at least, you know, that's something that can actually follow you around. Ayato, on the other hand, might actually be alright, specifically full ER ult Ayato, but I don't have either of these two characters, so I can't say for certain. This brings us, of course, to two main Hydro off-fielders that tend to work pretty well in a Tighnari team. The first one, of course, is Furina, who I've already been using in a Tighnari Quickbloom team. But the problem is when you have Tighnari, Lauma, and Furina, then you need a healer. Otherwise, you're going to be permanently at 50% HP, which is kind of going to suck. C4 Dory is pretty much the only electro healer that can sustain a Furina team, but when you play C4 Dory, she tends to not have that much EM, so that kind of sucks as well. Like I mentioned, I don't think C1 Lauma is going to work, so we're kind of screwed there. I know, on the other hand, being the upcoming 4-star off-field Hydro character, can work functionally. The problem is she's from Nod-Krai, and so because she's from Nod-Krai, you end up with Lauma's A1 passive swapping from the particularly good C2 Nahida Bloom buff back to just being Lunar Bloom DPS buffs, which isn't necessarily all that great because we're trying to use Tighnari and the Electro character to do a lot of Hyper Blooms on top of maintaining a sort of quicken aura. So yeah, I don't think this is going to work all that well. All of this to say, Tighnari and Lauma Quickbloom teams is probably going to be feeling awkward and a little bit scuffed for the time being. There may be a chance that Columbina somehow changes everything and somehow lets Lauma still keep the Nahida style bloom buffs. We'll just have to see. Speaking of Dory, we also have another team that I want to talk about. Team number 4 being Thundering Dory. There are a few variations that I want to try to see how good a scuffed they end up being. For example, double Dendro Quickbloom Dory, double Electro Quickbloom Dory with Miko Official, and then of course Thundering Dory's Raid Squad. Dory, of course, is Xionyx's waking nightmare, and so it'll be hilarious to see her just absolutely popping off with a new character like Lauma. At the end of the day, with Quickbloom teams, C2 Nahida is probably going to be a little bit stronger overall compared to, let's say, C0, C1 Lauma because of a more balanced focus on aggravate and bloom damage. But for those of us who don't have C2 Nahida, Lauma is probably shaping up to result in more overall damage for these kinds of teams. We'll just have to see. There is one other team that I think might be really interesting to try out, and that is of course team number 5, a Nod-Krai Neuvillette team, with Neuvillette and Furina, Lauma of course, and just for shits and giggles, let's chuck in Ineffa as well. That way we have both Lunar Bloom and Lunar Charge happening at the same time. The Hyper Blooms are already getting scuffed because they're not going to have Lauma's proper A1, but they weren't going to be doing as much damage as you would have hoped in the first place unless you're playing full EM Ineffa. I personally play crit Ineffa, so maybe that's not going to make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. The double Hydro from Neuvillette and Furina should be enough to get a lot of Lunar Charge Thunderclouds glowing as well. So if anything, this might be a team where a lot of that direct Lunar damage makes up a fair portion of the team DPS. We also get some Hydro Res from Lauma, so that's of course going to be pretty hype. So at the end of the day, look, if it all goes to crap, then I'll just swap out Ineffa for Miko again and we'll just play a much more normal looking Hyper Bloom Neuvillette team. Will this be another Neuvillette buff? Guess we'll have to find out. Oh, and by the way, as a bonus, let's add in a team number 6 in this top 5 teams if you're a Kinich main, because you might want to try out the only virgin team that I would ever give any thought to, which is Kinich, Lauma, maybe Yelan, for example, and Moika. Is Emily's lunch getting eaten already? So these are the top 6 teams that I want to try with Lauma when I get her. We've got the Nilou team that everyone's excited for, a lot of Quickbloom teams, some Chaos options. I personally don't prefer Virgin teams myself, and yet another Neuvillette buff. Looking ahead, there's rumors that Ineffa might end up being a Lunar Bloom DPS, in much the same way that Flynn's is a Lunar Charge DPS for someone like Ineffa. So we'll just see if she's interesting enough for me to go ahead and grab her. But like I mentioned, the next character of some importance to the Moon Worshipper, it seems, might actually end up being the Moon Maiden herself, Columbina. So I'm keen to see what her kit ends up looking like when her beta kicks around. Let me just leave with all of this in the comments below. What are your teams that you are looking forward to try with Lauma? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact Luna I. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye. Can't see.